All right, this is Monday, January 22nd, regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Committee. Um, Present at the start is Councilor Greenberg from Ward 1. Councilor Mickley is out of town for work. He's going to try and join us at some point, but he's not here as of now. Councilor Malachi from Ward 3, Councilor Gentile from Ward 4, Councilor Humphrey from Ward 5. I see Councilor Bixby from Ward 6, Councilor Grossman from Ward 7. And that's who we have at this, oh, and Councilor Lipoff from Ward 8. So other than David, we're all here. Thank you for being on time. First item is 60-24. It's Her Honor the Mayor reappointing Alan S. Cohen of 12 Fillmore Road as a member of the Board of Assessors. We didn't talk about this at the last meeting. My policy has always been, and I think it's most chairs, that if it's a reappointment, typically we don't ask people to come back in unless there's some particular issue that a counselor may have. We can talk about it, and if need be, we will have the appointment or the reappointment come in. I didn't hear from anybody on this one, but that's the way we can do it in the future. Alan, I just checked and Evan pointed out for me that Alan's been with the city for 30 years, not in this particular position. But he's been in the assessors department since 1994. So I think he's got pretty good track record. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Rick, you know him well from your work and appraising and so forth.
I do. Not only does he do a great job here, but he's currently president of the Mass Board of Real Estate Appraisers. I'm on the Board of Trustees and work closely with him over there. We're lucky to have Alan Cohen, and I'll move him whenever it's necessary, whenever the time is right.
I'll take that as that you're moving him right now. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. The people that are here 7-0. 61-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting approval to accept and expend a $500 a donation from the Newton Highlands Congregational Church for LGBTQ plus celebrations. Ms. Durrett, I think, did I see Hattie?
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Would you care to present this one for us, please?
Sure. Reverend Ken Bailey from the church reached out to me. They have this money that they give away each year. And this past year we did, we had our annual flag raising. The money is not for that because that already has funds, but we did partnered with some other community agencies to run some other events throughout the city. So the money is to be used during the month for what we deem appropriate.
Okay. Any questions? We're just being asked to accept the money. No questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
All right, motion by Council Malachi. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It's approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Short and sweet. 62-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend $18,720 in a grant from the state 911 department for the emergency medical dispatch grant program. I see Officer McMains. I assume you're here for this, officer.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Please go right ahead and share with us whatever you'd like regarding the grant.
Thank you. Annually, the Communications Dispatch Center applies for grants in upwards of $300,000 for staffing, for overtime, We also apply for $30,000 to $40,000 in training each year to continue education of our dispatchers. To comply with those grants, we have to do 10% of various types of calls that we take in dispatch. This year we chose emergency medical dispatch. So of approximately 93,000 or 9,300 calls that we take every year for that type of incident, we have to quality assurance check 936 of those calls. We've recently, on a long-term absence, have lost our senior dispatch supervisor, Laura McGarrigle, who's out. She's going to retire in February. We're going to replace her. Until we do that, we have to conduct quality assurance checks on these calls that I mentioned. To do that, we've applied for and gotten this grant for $18,720. And with that money, we want to team with this group, Denise Amber Lee Foundation, to help us do quality assurance checks. If you want to Google that at some point, Denise Amber Lee was a 21-year-old mother down in Florida. She was abducted. There were many witnesses who observed that. Many people called the dispatch center down there. The dispatch center did not dispatch police officers who were in the area to respond to that kidnapping and abduction. She was found a short time later, dead. Since that time, the Denise Amber Lee Foundation has been going around to various communities doing 911 quality assurance checks. So we partnered with them to have them do, again, 936 calls that we respond to. Each call costs about $20. Essentially, that's what the money will be used for. And again, this is to become in compliance so we can also get the $300,000 loan and the training loan for $30,000 to $40,000.
Okay. Questions? So if no one has a question, I just wanted to jump in for a minute. So the thing that I did notice was that we were partnering with a company from Florida. It just seemed like maybe there might be somebody a little closer in the area, but is the connection what you just mentioned about the incident that happened down in Florida? Have you worked with these folks before?
We have not. However, Captain Dowling is in charge of our dispatch center. He's gotten a ton of recommendations, including those from the state 911 agency that monitors this grant on who we should do. Interestingly enough, this 21-year-old girl who passed away, her father was a detective down there at the time of this incident. And again, he couldn't do much other than ensure that dispatch centers around the country, this company works with dispatch centers around the country to ensure quality assurance.
Okay, thank you. Council Greenberg.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Officer McMains. So is this the only quality assurance program that the force uses for their dispatchers?
The only one that we're using out of our department. We currently have an acting senior dispatch supervisor who's going through and doing random quality assurance checks weekly. This is something we have to do to comply with the other grants, as I explained, but we do continuously do quality assurance checks throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Council Grossman.
Thank you. Can you just please remind us on the other grants and the loans that you were referring to, how that works and those terms? I just don't recall a loan portion of the previous grants, so I'm just looking to refresh my memory.
I hope I didn't say loan. There are no loans.
Okay.
We receive approximately a $300,000 grant every year for staffing issues, staffing, pay overtime, regular salaries. And we also receive, I believe it's between $30,000 and $40,000 for continuing education and training for our dispatchers.
Got it. I may have misheard that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Council Maliki.
Yes, how does quality assurance work? Is it sort of testers making pretend calls that sound authentic, or are they sort of listening in on actual calls?
So we've signed a non-disclosure agreement with these folks. We will be sending them, again, about approximately 936 calls that we haven't already pre-screened. They will review those. We've also sent them all of our policies and procedures for dispatch. They're also going to compare those to the APCO, which is I forget what the acronym stands for. Essentially, it's the dispatch training portion that we send our new dispatchers to for an essential academy. So they'll look at all those standards. They will listen to those calls, and they'll make sure that we either comply with those the standards that we have set, or the national standards, or we do not, in which case they'll have a final report which talks about the cases that they've listened to.
So they're sort of, you're sending them past calls that have already happened and been dealt with, and they are listening to how they were dealt with?
Yes, and they will develop a critique, and did we do positively, did we do negatively, and how do we improve, and how do we continue doing what we're doing that's good.
And this is something that happens every year?
Typically, we do this ourselves through our senior dispatch supervisor, but again, she's out on long-term disability. She's going to retire soon. We're going to replace her, and in the meantime, we're going to hopefully, if this grant is issued, you folks approve it, then we'll be able to get those quality assurance tests done, so we qualify for those other grants.
Okay, so this is actually the first time you've done it with an outside sort of independent party?
As far as I know, yes. We may have done it years and years ago, but in the recent history, yeah, this is the first time we've done it.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Motion.
Thank you. So the motion to approve has been made by Councilor Grossman. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, next is item 27-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend the sum of $925,000 of June 30, 2023 certified free cash for the purpose of funding curriculum materials for the Newton Public Schools. We are joined by Superintendent Nolan. As you all know, we had a discussion about this at our first meeting of the month. I will open up the floor to anyone that has any questions. Evan, let me just remind you, you might want to text Counselor Mickley. So are there any questions from counselors? Let me start with Counselor Grossman.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Superintendent Nolan, for being here, especially in light of everything you have going on. I think I'll get right to the heart of the matter, which is that I fully support investing in the curriculum materials. My mind is a little mixed up on this item, and I'll say it again when the next item comes before us, about whether we should be moving forward at all on any of these sorts of appropriations from free cash in light of what is going on in the city today. And if you could, or I see Ms. Lemieux very quickly put her hand up, speak to how you're thinking about this. I would love to hear that. And then as the discussion goes on, I'd love to hear my colleagues' thoughts on that as well. Full well, please understanding that I am 100% behind this concept and wanting to make this investment and other similar investments. Thanks.
Well, I know you asked for the superintendent, so I'm fine. I'm gonna make sure that both Maureen and the superintendent both get to speak on this, so it's just a question of order. So, are you ready to, do you want to respond now, Superintendent?
I am happy to concede to Ms. Lemieux if she
All
would
right,
like
go
to
ahead,
speak.
Maureen.
Thank you, and thank you, Superintendent. I just want to say this is part of a total package, if you will. You all know that we had a substantial amount of free cash that was declared for this year. We also have the overlay surplus, where we have, again, substantial amounts of money. We have tried to put a package in front of you that utilizes one-time free cash funds for very necessary projects in both the schools and on the city side. We have kept the entirety of the $26 million that was declared in the overlay surplus. The mayor, the superintendent, the chair of the school committee as I think you have all probably read, have continued. You know that we put different possible programs in front of you, 2 of them in the last term. We still have all of those funds intact. We are still hoping that we will work with you as a council to set up a multi-year approach of how we use those funds best to help the school department. So I don't want anyone to think that in approving this, that we are not going to have the funds to make sure that we're taking care of the school department. So just, from a global perspective, and then I'm more than happy for the superintendent to talk about how closely we've worked with what their most important needs were and why the list looks as it does for the school department side.
Okay, all set, superintendent?
Yes, thank you. And obviously, to Counselor Grossman's point, I'm concerned about sort of the whole scope of needs emergent at this time period. However, this is a one-time fund, seems appropriate for these curriculum scenarios, because we have some finite work that we could do that would fit under that non-recurring area description. And I can't let go of that as a priority, as you hired me to be the head of teaching and learning and to push an agenda that improves the academics of this particular institution. And I just, if I may, Counselor Gentile, just share my screen. I've made a very simple visual that can show you just in elementary science the challenge that is before us and why these types of infusions for curriculum training and resources is important.
Please go right ahead.
So this visual that I'm showing you here is the curriculum units for elementary science. And I'll just blow it up because if you're like me, your vision is struggling with this. So this is a color-coded map of our curriculum in science at the elementary school. Yellow means it does not align at all to standards that were published back in 2016. Blue means they're somewhat aligned, but significant revisions are needed to the existing curriculum. And green means that they are new curriculum that have been piloted last year with no budget for the actual deployment of it district-wide. It doesn't need revision. It aligns with the current STEM standards, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but there was no budget created to sustain and purchase materials for all of the grade levels. I say that to you because it's a setup for students who then have to take a 5th grade science MCAS and an 8th grade science MCAS if we are not even putting the right units in front of them from the K-5 scope. So this is just one pocket. So we are prioritizing a math audit and a science audit for the next 2 years. And this would accelerate that process and allow me to actually expand those green areas to all of our schools and get the training and make sure that we are moving in the right direction. It's just one example of the types of supports and professional development that could become emergent if these curriculum materials are available.
Okay. Councilor Grossman, do you have any other question right now?
No, I am definitely compelled by the need. I am just wrestling with tonight's circumstances. So if other colleagues have thoughts on that matter, and quite honestly, I may feel differently about this item than the next package of items. I really came into tonight open-minded about how to handle it. So I'm sort of looking to my colleagues and our leadership on the municipal and school side to sort of guide here. And I appreciate the opportunity to ask the question. Thanks.
Okay, we can come back. Councilor Greenberg.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent, for being here. There obviously is a great need for this, because I think you said at the last meeting that it's been 20 years since there has been an audit. Is that correct?
It- Mhm.
And those green squares that you showed us, you said that they align with what children should be learning, but there's no funding for those, is that right?
So there has been some funding for some schools who have been part of the pilot. And it was piloted as part of a National Science Foundation grant funding scenario. So we shouldered the first deployment, but as you know, to make sure that it occurs in every school and that we're not getting some aligned curriculum in a couple schools and not in all schools, we are going to need to cement that curriculum deployment across the entire city.
And so if we do fill up that whole grid with green squares, will there be enough funding for that?
So not every piece of this requires funding, but some of the materials that are being considered. So for example, in 4 and 5, there's some gaps that they've intended to fill with the purchase of Mystery Science curriculum. And we are now in a period of the Department of Ed has sort of blessed some curriculum as the best research-based open science curriculum, which we are judging it now. Some of it is free and some of it is for purchase. So I can't exactly answer that all of this would be done in 1 year with those funds, but that's our hope, that we will be able to get as close to green everywhere.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, I think this is an important approval from us. I think we need to meet these standards since we're so far behind. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Superintendent.
Okay, Mr. Friedman, I do see your hand. This isn't a public hearing.
I'm on the Woburn Area Council, if that helps. I don't know if it does. I don't know if it does.
I mean, did you have a quick question or just a quick comment?
No, I had a comment. I mean, we're
quick one.
rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. We need 4 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 2 high schools. We have an edifice complex. We're spending an inordinate amount of our budget on real estate. Anybody with a brain would look at this and say, that's stupid. We have a housing crisis. Teachers can't afford to live here. Firemen, police, no one else can live here. Do you want to fix this? Get rid of the edifice complex, turn it into housing, and build good schools with great administration, support our public employees with subsidized housing, tax incentives to make sure it works, and stop screwing around. We're playing with pawns. Play with the kings, play with the queens, play with the rooks, play with the knights. I mean, I turned around companies that were losing $2 to $9 million a day for 25 years. And I have never seen anything as moronic as this.
All right.
The schools should have another 50 million.
Mr. Friedman, I'm gonna ask you to stop there. There's another place and time. This is not the discussion that we're having under this item. So, anyone else on the committee that has a question or a comment? Councilor Grossman, I fully understand what you say. These are unprecedented times, even for an old timer like me. And we all hope that this will get that the contract will get settled and everybody can get back into the schools. But I agree with Councilor Greenberg that this is a really important need that will do good things for the system when the system is back and running. And so I'm fully prepared to support the request. I think that it's been demonstrated that it's been very well thought out. It's been a need that's been identified by our new superintendent. And so I plan on supporting it, but I certainly understand and appreciate why you would raise the question. Anyone else, or is somebody willing to make a motion for me, please?
I'll move approval.
Okay, Council Greenberg has moved approval. Are there any other comments? Seeing,
oh,
yes,
Sorry.
That's
I just
okay.
wanted, and sorry, I didn't get my virtual hand up quickly
That's
enough.
fine.
In light of my colleagues being ready to move forward, as I said, I do passionately believe in this need and in getting the kids this support. I don't know. We're going to get to the next item. I still don't know how I'm going to feel about that one, but I do want to make it crystal clear that this is something that I do really care about. So in light of that and how others feel about it, I will also support it tonight. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? So there's a motion to approve. Let's try it on a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, that's approved 7-0. Thank you. Let's do.
8-0.
Oh, David, you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, 8-0. All right, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Superintendent, and Maureen, you're sticking around, I imagine, okay. Last item on tonight's agenda anyway, and it's a big one, is docket item 33-24. Honor the mayor requesting $11,475,000 for a number of Newton Public Schools and municipal infrastructure improvements. I read them into the record at the last meeting, so I'm not going to read them in again this meeting. We have, again, our CFO is here. Shauna Sullivan is here from Public Works. And Josh is here. So I didn't see any new information and going over the packet again. I didn't really expect any new information. I know that several of you have had an opportunity to discuss or to get more information at the substantive committees. So I guess the best thing for me to do is to check in with you and see if there are any questions or comments on any of the particular line items. I have one. I can start it off while the rest of you are thinking. Josh, in looking at the information a second time, can you help make the case? You made the case, at least to me, that the police department parking lot is in such disrepair that it needs to be done, and it's a substantial amount of work because it's so deteriorated. I get that. I'm just a little troubled or question the need to put a fence around that and everything else that goes with it at a tune of, I think, $250,000. I know things don't stand still, but for 40 years, you know, having lived right off of Cherry Street, I used to pass through behind the police station because there were obvious traffic advantages in doing that. And then we got to the point where the public was prevented from doing so. I get that, but I guess I need to understand why we have to spend $250,000. To me, it's a little bit of overkill, but I'm happy to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Counselor. It's a great question. So this project really, there are a couple driving factors for it. For folks that are not familiar, the parking lot behind police headquarters has I would say roughly 80 parking spaces that are fully utilized throughout the day. It is a fairly routine occurrence to have pedestrians and bicyclists cut through that lot. even though if you look at it from an aerial standpoint, there are more accessible, safer routes and shorter routes, quite frankly, around the site. Yet we still see daily pedestrian and bicycle access through the lot. The challenge there is that it's an active police facility. So there are police cruisers coming and going. And there have been numerous incidents in which police, when backing out of parking spaces, pulling out of parking spaces, there are pedestrians or bicyclists who are not looking, not paying attention. And there've been some near misses with police on that front. So some of it is just protecting residents and from auto ped or auto bicycle accident. I think also, the way I described it in the backup letter, this is probably something that is a long time overdue. So to your point, we've lived this way for quite a while. Doesn't mean that it's been ideal. And in some cases it's been problematic and in some cases unsafe. But for example, over at our DPW facilities, those are fenced in. We don't allow people to walk through there because it's unsafe. There's a lot of vehicles coming and going. And it's just not a place where we would want to mix pedestrians, bicyclists, and our fleet vehicles. The same thing is true at Parks and Rec. We have that fenced in with a gate system. In this case, we think that it's appropriate for the police parking lot to also be secure. Police can certainly speak to, security benefits to having it fenced in as well. And we have the full support of the courts because it will certainly benefit them to have a more secure parking lot as well.
Okay, thanks. Council Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You actually asked the questions that I was initially going to ask, but I did have a few others. I know we had talked about all of these items in some detail the previous time and in some of the other committees, I think, as well. But as Councilor Grossman alluded to earlier tonight, I think we're sort of all making sure we do another layer of scrutiny at the moment on this. Are there any of these items that, because I'm assuming they're not all happening at the same time. We've talked previously about how they're all basically urgent, but are there any of them where we know like, oh, this is going to start right away or February, 15th or, that kind of thing? And conversely, are there any of these items where we know, oh, we're not going to actually start work on that for, 3 months or 5 months?
So I will say in jest that I'm a dangerous man to give money to because I don't sit idle when funds are placed in my lap. All of these projects I would be looking to start within 24 hours of approval.
Oh, I like to hear that. Did any of the other staff have any comments on any particular items here in the list?
Counselor, we would go out to bid on all of our items for paving to get the best pricing right away.
Okay, so that was one that I was wondering where I figured, yeah, you probably have to get the approval before you even do the work, like far enough ahead. So there is somewhat of a ticking clock here in terms of making sure that we get the best deals we can on some of these projects.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, Councilor. And the other thing, just like DPW is trying to get out ahead of things for the construction season, for us, where a lot of these are school projects, every contractor for 8 weeks in the summer is working for schools around the Commonwealth. So the sooner that we can get this funds, the sooner we can get out on the street, the sooner we lock up those contractors for this summer, the sooner we can get all this work done.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate that point. And as I said, in the previous discussions that we had, I think you all had successfully made the case that each of these items individually is a very high priority with high urgency. And in past years, we wouldn't have bundled these together in one item, but we still would have been taking them up over the course of several months in this part of the fiscal year. So, I'm fine with moving approval on this tonight. Obviously, I did have the same kind of hesitation and questions that Councilor Grossman expressed earlier, but I do feel like this is a situation where we know we're going to do these. We know they're very critically urgent. We were going to do them regardless of, recent events and on, however that even gets resolved. And we don't want to miss any key timetables or have to pay extra on something because we stalled on it. So I'm fine with moving approval on this. I had even thought about, like, do we want to go through one by one and, vote them each parentheses or anything like that? But, there wasn't anything after a very thorough discussion, with the possible exception of the one that Councilor Gentile was asking about. But even that, we've heard a pretty reasonable case there, and I don't want to be coming back here in a year doing a legal settlement case on that. It seems like these are all individually very good ideas that need to be done and can't really wait, or shouldn't really wait. I mean, I also don't want a roof to collapse on some students or something like that. So I'm going to move approval at this time.
Okay, motion has been made to approve. Council Humphrey, you actually remind me of a point that I wanted to make. As you said, these things are usually rolled out over time. And, it used to be that as soon as free cash was certified, that we would start to see some of these requests in the fall. And I actually think that it works better that way, Maureen. And plus we would get, maybe 3 or 4 items, and we would have an opportunity to maybe think about them, talk about them a little bit more. So I would hope that we might try to do that more next year and get started on these requests, because the sooner you start on them, then obviously the quicker the work gets done. So as opposed to, getting them in January, it would be good to see some of these as early as October. That's just one opinion.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would expect that we will go back to that process next year. It was because we had the overlay, we would try to put together a more holistic package for you this year. That's how and why we brought this forward the way that we did. But I would expect that next year we will be back to our normal procedures.
Okay. And that I forgot to ask on the previous item, and Maureen, maybe you know the answer to this, but if I remember from the text, the grant, I think, literally started on November 1 for the police that we were just talking about.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering why it's just getting to us now. And actually the board order has Councilor Grossman's name on it, which means that I think it was prepared to come to us much earlier than this. Do we know what happened with that?
I do not, to be honest.
Alright.
I think I don't know. Time may
Alright.
have gotten ahead of us on it.
Because the year in which it needs to be spent, we're like, at least a quarter of the way through it. Now, maybe they've already been doing some of the work anyway, but the timing just raised a couple of questions. His motion's been made. If you want an early night, all right, no, I see a couple hands. Councilor Grossman and then Councilor Greenberg.
Thank you so much. I am planning at this moment, and maybe Councilor Greenberg will sway me otherwise, to abstain tonight, which I almost never do. For those who've been working with me over these past 6 years, I think I can count a very, very small handful of times that I've abstained. I totally get and support the need for all of these different items. But as I'm looking back over the list, and Councilor Gentile and Councilor Humphrey, you also asked about the number 1 that I was sort of questioning. And I'm even looking back at the bathrooms, which I know we talked about extensively last time. And do not get me wrong, I want those bathrooms redone. I want them to be nicer. I want the staff and faculty and kids to have a much higher quality of life in these buildings. But I'm having a really hard time where we sit looking at 1.275 million on bathrooms when our kids are currently locked out of school. And I just can't in good conscience make the vote right now tonight. So I'm planning to abstain at this moment. Thanks.
Okay, Council Greenberg.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilor Grossman, but I don't know if I'll sway you because I'm on the fence myself. I did have a general question. In regards to the free cash update that we received from Mr. Curley on the 9th. You know, we have, he gave us the breakdown and a remainder of unobligated free cash of 12 million. Could you remind me and the public why we need to have 12 million in free cash? And is it possible to use more of that, or is that what is required for us to have in free cash for 2020 FY25?
Go ahead, Mr. Curley.
I can comment. That is just money that the administration has not yet allocated as a docket request before the council. So you will likely see most of that money throughout the next 5 months of the year, but Ms. Lemieux, I'm sure, can likely give you a little bit more information on that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So you, I know Councilor Greenberg, you were not on finance last year, but for everybody else who was on finance, actually, there are several people who weren't on finance. We did not appropriate $5.4 million worth of last year's free cash because we have held it for anticipated requirements that we will have, that the timing just hasn't happened yet for those items. So that's the first 5.4 million that we are holding. Then we always hold money until we get to the springtime. I like to have at least 2.5 million available from free cash in case we have a difficult winter. For anyone who remembers the winter of 2015, today is only January 22nd. It had not started snowing yet that year. And we had well over 100 inches and we spent $7.5 million on snow removal that year. So there are different, we'll hold 1.5 million we typically put toward the next year's budget. So there are different specific things that at this point in the year, I wouldn't want to use much of that free cash at all until we get to April. And then you may very well see us coming back in with a few more projects.
So, Councilor Greenberg, I want to make sure it's been made clear to you that there is no requirement that I'm aware of that says that we must maintain X amount of dollars in free cash.
Okay.
It's, I mean, you try
That's
to,
correct.
yeah, you try to be prudent about it, common sense. The example about, you know, all of a sudden you can have this, you know, several snowstorms, that all goes into the thinking to be wise with the money, but there's no requirement that we have to keep a buffer of a certain amount.
Okay. That's clear. But and so until the spring, we won't know what will be available to us for other expenses.
We will probably not be coming forward for at least the next couple of months with other uses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bixby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I guess I just want to share my colleagues' discomfort with this moment. And, you know, I think my questions this evening were mostly asked and answered to a certain extent. You know, I think my hope is that we can get the students and teachers back in the buildings soon and that we can be on track to get them back in safe and healthy buildings, which is a big piece and need in our schools right now. And I think, you know, one thing we can all agree on at this moment is that investments in our schools is a really important thing. And so, you know, my inclination is to try and help make that happen. But I do have concerns about the fact that this is all a part of a package at this moment. And so it's hard to separate out these items while at the same time not having specifics on what might be happening with other free cash. So unfortunately, I don't have any questions at this moment, but just wanted to say that I'm in the same place and I'm not quite sure where we'll go right now.
Okay. Council Mickley, I thought I saw your hand earlier. Were you still looking to speak or had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everyone hear me all right? Just want to make sure my audio is
You're
good.
fine.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think Councilor Grossman raises a good point that's important to wrestle with. I just want to also, I guess, share why we were thinking about supporting this a few weeks ago, at least why I was. When this initially came up, I reached out to the school committee chair to get a sense of this is the kind of needs the school needs. We received emails from parents, we received emails from students on these issues and the importance of funding these issues. You know, bathrooms might sound like a silly topic, but we received emails about kids not being able to focus because they didn't feel like the bathroom was a comfortable place where they could use the bathroom. So they were holding it in all day. So I do see these items as tied to our goals to support the schools in general. But I also do hear the concerns that Councilor Grossman, Councilor Bixby are raising, Councilor Greenberg as well, of our decision of whether to do this right now, while there's so much that we need to negotiate. So I am looking forward to having this be a broader discussion with all council. I think it's important that we have a revisit of these items with various stakeholders involved. I do hope to support this item when it gets to the full council, but I think ideally we have the contract resolved before that. And so I too will be abstaining for tonight with the hope that we have the contract resolved and that we could support this when it reaches the full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me get to Council Lipoff. He hasn't had a chance to speak.
I have a different take on this. I've had a lot of conversations with parents and people in the community about what we're going through. But I want to remind everybody, and the schools are, we show how important the schools are. They're 60% at least of our budget. And we want to support our teachers and we want to get this done. But when you look at what we're spending here, to run a city, it's salaries and it's also infrastructure. There are some people that want us to take all of our money and give it to the schools and do nothing with our bathrooms, our roofs, our HVAC, our pool. I mean, running a city means taking care of everything. And this group of items here, a bunch of them are directly related to our schools. They're all quite necessary to take care of our house. If you don't take care of your house and just your kids, your house falls on top of your kids. I mean, you've got to take care of it all. And this pool system that is quite dangerous with the chlorine in the air is important. The roof on the Pierce Elementary School is important. All of these things are important. And as city councilors, I don't think we hold hostage the things that we need to do while we're working on the crisis that's in front of us. So I'm going to support this tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Lemieux and then Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I feel like I would almost be remiss if I didn't make sure that everybody understood just how much we too want to get the kids back in the schools. This is a crisis in front of us. I don't want anyone to think that we are taking that lightly and just moving forward, spending money that we need to repurpose. That's why I mentioned in the beginning, we have the overlay funds. The mayor has worked with the superintendent, the chair of the school committee. These projects, as Councilor Lipoff said, are incredibly important. There is not a city council meeting. I think your actual meeting is probably 2 weeks from tonight, which gives us time. If you were to move it forward tonight, it gives us 2 weeks to hopefully have everything resolved that's in front of us before you would be taking this up as a full council. So please just keep that in mind. But I don't want anyone to think that settling the contract and getting the kids back in the schools, this is all we have been focused on. The mayor has been 24/7 on this, staying in touch with the school committee, working on the different communications that we've put out. So I just want everyone to make sure that they understand that when we docketed this in December, because that's when we actually docketed it, clearly we didn't think we would be sitting here at finance tonight, with the situation that we are in. But that's why I really want to emphasize that we have the overlay funds that we've been working with the schools with.
All right, thank you. So I haven't heard a single person say that they plan on voting against the item. I hear some people saying they want to abstain, which I completely understand. But I fully expect that Councilor Humphrey's motion will at least get a vote and that it will move on to the full council and we'll see what happens there. Commissioner, I see Councilor Humphrey has his hand up. Let me call on him in case he has a question that you need to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was just going to briefly comment that I certainly don't think there's any harm in moving it out of committee tonight to the full council. If for some reason something happened that we needed to take a different action at the full council or even delay it at the full council, that option is fully available. It hasn't come before the full council before. It could even be charter objected if it absolutely came down to it. And while I recognize that not all of the items in the list are schools related, a bunch of them are very critical. And I would suggest that they would probably help with resolving the current situation because, at least moving it out of finance is a show of good faith that we're planning to also pay for our buildings and not have them, not working or falling apart or whatever. And that is not a direct topic of the negotiations, but it has, as other counselors have mentioned, been something that has certainly come up as like a contributing factor to sort of morale and feeling like you're not being heard and that kind of thing. So to my mind, this is helpful in, again, we're not taking a final vote tonight, but we're moving forward in the process. And I just don't see that as being incompatible with resolving the other situation. Thank you.
Good. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say briefly, or remind folks briefly that we developed, speaking to the school projects, we developed this list in working with the superintendent and the school committee, the superintendent staff and the principals. The principals got a lot of their input from their staff and from the PTOs. These projects are high priorities for the district. And in the backup, you'll see that there were letters of support that I submitted on behalf, directly from the various principals from these schools. So I just wanted to help frame that conversation that this is something that is near and dear to the hearts of many people in Newton Public Schools, from the top to the bottom.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, there's been a motion to approve. I think just to make it easier for Evan to see who's where, because I anticipate a few abstentions anyway. Let's raise our hands on this one. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I see Council Maliki, Gentile, Humphrey, Greenberg, Lipoff. Okay. All of those opposed? Let me get my hand
Bixby
down.
also raising her hand there.
Okay, any opposed?
Sorry, yeah.
Council Bixby, did you vote in favor?
Yes, I was trying to, just
Okay, sorry, I missed
trouble
it.
with the reactions. Thank
Evan,
you.
you have that, right? Okay, any opposed? Abstentions? I see two abstentions. Okay, so it looks like it's 6 in favor with no one opposed and 2 abstentions. Okay. All right. that is everything on our agenda. Councilor Greenberg, did you have a question?
I do. I'm sorry, Councilor
That's
Gentile.
all right.
Since we have Maureen here and she's mentioned the overlay surplus fund, could she tell us what the next steps of the process will be for that? Because she said that it's under discussion, and I'm just wondering, is that going to come before us?
Thank you, Councilor Greenberg. We are, as I said, we've been working with the school department. We will also be working with Chairman Gentile. We will be speaking with President Laredo and the other members of leadership of the council, and trying to figure out if our feeling has been putting that money in a stabilization account where it could earn interest and where we could more or less have a real plan for it. You know, we still think that is a very attractive thing for the city. However, we plan, as I said, to really work with members of the council to figure out how we can all get to a place with that fund that we are all comfortable with whatever decisions we're asking you to make. So I think you have not heard the last of overlay. Worst case, if nothing happens to it, if it's still sitting where it is, I would imagine when we present the budget to you in April, we will have a line item in our revenue in the budget that would be utilizing some of those overlay funds. If nothing happens to it, it drops to next year's free cash. And I know we as an administration would prefer not to see that happen. I've had several conversations with Councilor Gentile. It's really a matter of us all figuring out what the best step forward is with those funds.
Okay, thank you.
So let me just, since you brought it up, Councilor Greenberg, and it's a good question, let me also just fill you in that there have been some discussions. There has been a little bit of research that's been done about the kinds of stabilization funds that we're allowed to use. You know, does it need a 2/3 vote? Does it need a majority vote? I know I've talked to our auditors because what I don't want to see happen is for us to set up a fund, whether it's a stabilization fund or some other reserve fund, and then find out when we go through an audit that we probably shouldn't have done that because you know, it violates municipal finance law. So there is some stuff like that that's going on so that we can make an informed decision, including we've talked to the state, you know, the Division of Local Services to get their take on it. So I don't want you to think that nothing's going on. It's just the administration isn't ready yet to make a recommendation as to what they would like to do with the money and if they you know, want to put it in a specific type of fund, and if they're comfortable, and if we're all comfortable that we're allowed to do that. So it's a little bit involved that way. But in the meantime, it continues to, I believe, sit with the MMDT. Last I knew, it was earning over 5% interest. So it's not like we're leaving money on the table. It's in a good spot. It's where we would, even if it was in a stabilization fund, it would probably be in the same account, so.
Okay.
All right.
It's just that we're getting emails from residents wondering why we're not using that overlay surplus fund to help settle the contract. And so I'm just wondering, you know, at one point we'll learn how that's being used.
Okay. Councilor Grossman?
Thank you. I'm a little worried that we're getting far flung from our items. So I have a follow-up question, but if you think it's inappropriate to keep
No,
talking about this,
It's
let me
fine.
know.
Go right ahead. It's early.
So I'm a little confused because I totally get that there may be ongoing discussions about the format of the a stabilization fund or some other format, but weren't there public announcements about a very substantial portion of this money essentially already being pledged to NPS. And I'm a little confused about what we're talking about right now.
So there were some comments made earlier this month about the overlay surplus fund being a source of money that would be available to help with issues with the school department, whether it be capital improvement one-time funds or to possibly support the operating budget. But I don't think that it's something that was going to happen overnight, and I certainly don't think anyway, Maureen can correct me if I'm wrong, that all of a sudden all 26 million is going to disappear. So in the meantime, as you know, there had already been a couple of attempts to put the overlay surplus into a couple of different stabilization funds. Neither of those attempts were successful, so we're continuing to explore while we're figuring out what to do with the money, what kind of an account it should be in. But the way things that are going, there's no harm being done by having it just, you know, sit in overlay surplus. I personally don't think we're helping ourselves by keeping talking about two separate funds. It's cash. It's cash that is available to the city to do with what the city thinks, meaning the administration and the city council with input from the school committee, is the best way to spend the money. Free cash and overlay surplus, to me, it's absolutely no difference. So right now it's, you know, it's in that MMDT account. It's earning a very healthy interest. And as you know, we have some decisions to make, which have to be initiated by the mayor as to what to do with it. So I hope that it's, you know, no more confusing than that. And again, no decisions have been made. We just want to make sure that the right decision is made and that the finance committee, you know, will be fully involved in whatever decision, you know, we recommend to the full council. And there may not be anything other than what we're doing right now, keeping it in, you know, an overlay surplus account that the city can reach into at any time if they feel the need to do so, including helping with the contract. I hope that helps, but
No, it does. I'm just looking at the frequently asked questions that got sent out last night and some of the recent announcements. I just want to make sure my understanding of that squares with this conversation. But I don't have anything to add beyond that right now, just making sure I get it. Thank you.
okay. But I want to make sure that everybody, particularly on finance, understands it's like there's not some big plan that's already been agreed to or, you know, vetted. It's not like that. I think that right now, the mayor, Maureen and others, and everybody has so much on their plate that they're focused on the negotiation. So there really hasn't been a lot of work that's been done as far as the right home for overlay surplus. But it may just be that it gets appropriated, a lot of it gets appropriated over the course of this fiscal year, and then it may not make much of a difference to just let it fall to free cash, you know, especially if the number's down quite a bit. So we just need to see, I guess, how things are going to play out. Okay, but any kind of a stabilization fund, to my knowledge, it needs a 2/3 vote in order to set it up. So, you know, that's a challenge. So clearly the council is gonna have a lot to say. And one of the things that's made it at least a little bit more interesting is about 3 weeks ago, the state changed the laws around stabilization funds. And, you know, it used to be that you needed 2/3 to set it up and you needed 2/3 to appropriate the money. But they changed the rules to set up what's called, I think it's called like a special stabilization fund, where it takes a 2/3 vote to set it up, but only a majority vote to be able to expend the money, which is obviously more attractive to the administration. I personally think that if we could do something like that, I think it's better myself in the long run, but you folks may think differently. You may want the, you know, the 2/3 requirement. So there's a lot of moving parts it's involved. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, motion to adjourn. Again, thank you for showing up on time and being here, and we're adjourned for the evening. Thanks.
Thank you all very much.